And joining me now, senior MSNBC political analyst Matthew Dowd. He also served as a chief strategist for the 2004 Bush-Cheney campaign. And Democratic strategist Don Calloway, host of the Caucus Room podcast and founder of the National Voter Protection Action Fund. Don, first to you, there's been no major post-convention polling bump for Harris. Strategists in that camp are sort of okay with that, given the fact that they want this to look like a 50-50 race. They're trying to spin it that they are the underdog here. But when it comes to union households across the nation, Harris's lead over Trump is outside the margin of error. Only 1 in 10 U.S. workers are union members, but that ratio then shrinks to 1 to 5 in swing states. So how crucial are union voters to the ground game and getting out the vote as part of the Harris-Walz coalition, Don?
They're extraordinarily crucial. They're not just voters, but union voters tend to be among the more politically engaged. So if you have a union support, that's boots on the ground, folks knocking on doors, folks making phone calls. And we have to remember that Vice President Harris's electoral map is different than Joe Biden's in that it doesn't solely rely on that upper Midwestern blue wall. She's looking also at the Sun Belt, so Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia. She puts those states into play, but you absolutely cannot concede the blue wall, which is pretty much particularly in a Democratic constituency, determined by how active labor unions decide to be, both public sector and private sector labor unions. So she's not conceding that territory, and we see that by where she's spending Labor Day and really engaging with her campaign activity.
You make a great point there, Don, about the map in addition to the coalition building. And I want to come back to the map while we stay on this idea of union members and then business leaders, Matthew. Where is the difference there when it comes to how they're reacting to VP Harris at the top of the ticket? And where, in your view, do her pro-worker policies differ from Biden's, or don't they? Is she just carrying that mantle?
Well, the second question I'll deal with first, Allie, is I don't think there's much difference between the two on the pro-worker policies. I think it's a continuation of what Joe Biden has pushed really for his entire life. The support of unions, the strength of workers, the raising the minimum wage, having a living wage, all of those the vice president supports in this. And so I think that's where she is on that, and that's what I think is a benefit. The interesting thing about the coalition she's attempting to build and building in this is she has both union workers and workers behind her, but also most of the Fortune 500, I think, is very reluctant to support Donald Trump in this. Most of the business community realizes a stable leadership that's not chaotic like Donald Trump is better for them. And so she, interestingly, can have a coalition that is both pro-business because they want stability, they want some predictability, and pro-worker simultaneously. What Donald Trump has is a lot of rich folks from Silicon Valley that seem to support him. It's not the business community, it's not the Fortune 500, it's sort of very wealthy folks that think they're going to get a benefit from his presidency.
Yeah, and we saw some of those folks try to find a different avenue in the GOP primary, whether it was briefly with Tim Scott or Nikki Haley, and then some of them ultimately ended up coming right back home to Trump. I think one of the things that the Trump campaign is trying to do is ensure that some of these union workers will come home to them again. They've had success with that in 2016 and in 2020 in some of these critical states. So, Matthew, could they again in 2024?
Well, this is a race that's going to be decided by 3 or 4 points. So any margin on any community of any subset of the electorate is important. So it's not only union members. If Donald Trump tries to shave off 3 or 4%, that could have a profound effect in a race that's only going to be decided by a few thousand votes spread across 7 states, as Don said. So, yes, it's important, though I think she has a much better benefit this time around than actually Joe Biden did, because she has actually an enthusiasm advantage over Donald Trump right now that Joe Biden didn't have, and that is true even among union workers.
It's a fascinating thing, this dynamic around carrying enthusiasm, but it's also a question of speaking to the issues that voters say are important to them. Among those are abortion and reproductive health care. Trump has been vocal about this idea of sending the issue back to the states, but he also angered conservatives this week for saying that Florida's 6-week ban is too short before then reversing course and saying he'll vote to uphold that ban in Florida. Trump also then signaled his support for a ballot measure to legalize recreational marijuana in Florida. Conservatives oppose both of those positions, by the way. So how does the Trump team, Don, bridge that gap, and do they need to?
They need to bridge the gap, but I've been trying to make this point quite inarticulately for some time now. Over the last 10 years, Donald Trump has not been held to a standard where he's had to articulate substantive positions. And as a result, he has campaign staff all around the country, up and down the ballots, who don't know how to pivot, who don't know how to cobble together substantive positions that you need to pull together the loosely based coalition to win a presidential election. Donald Trump thus far in his career has just been allowed to bloviate, name call, and really engage in a whole lot of bombastic behavior to win elections. But it really does feel like with most shticks, the jig is really up on that. And we've seen that manifest with this abortion position, where this man is absolutely just in a whirlwind and doesn't know what to do. Now we see it in the marijuana stuff, but it's really reflective of the idea that he's never had to pin his campaign or his actual administration to substantive and executable ideas, and he's not going to be able to do so in a serious way in the next 60 days.
Matthew, I think what Don is saying there on these various issues, but I've always seen this on abortion with Trump back from the time that I was covering him in 2015, and he got over his skis at one point where he was saying that he thought women should be punished for accessing abortion. That was way out of step with where the party platform was even at that time. So now that you see him trying to have it a few different ways on this issue, saying he's very proud of having overturned Roe, but then also is proud to send the issue back to the states. He's now trying to muddy the water around things like IVF. What does that tell you about the importance of this issue and the way that the Trump team is thinking about it?
Well, this is the problem. To add on what Don just said, this is a problem when you're not a principled conservative with a substantive stand on certain issues, where you know how to speak about them and you know how to relate to them when they become complicated. Donald Trump has never had principled stands on this issue. I think, as you know, Allie, you've covered this, Donald Trump has had multiple stands on choice. He's been pro-choice. He's been all of the different things on this. He doesn't have a principled stand on this. And so when you have a series of backers who are conservatives, who then join a cult of personality with somebody that has no principled stands on these conservative issues, you get in this free-for-all and word salad that Donald Trump oftentimes speaks on and then has to retract, as we've seen in the course of the last 72 hours, because he doesn't know how and he hasn't thought about this issue in a way that is able to be substantive and principled.
And the reality here, too, is even though the rhetorical stances may be shifting and changing over the years, there is a body of work. There is a track record to speak to in terms of the kinds of justices he put on the court and the ways in which that had major implications across the country on this issue of reproductive health care access. Matthew Dowd and Don Callaway, thank you for spending part of your Monday with us.